Okay, next question, Modifier 59. This is one of our favorites. It keeps popping its head up. This time the questioner says, hi, can you talk about Modifier 59 a bit? I seem to be one of those that overuse it. I've gotten a few questions wrong by adding it. I have the Modifier download. She's talking about our free giveaway. It is very helpful. Maybe a couple of examples of when it is appropriate to use and when it is not, so I can see the difference. And you always have tips that are easy to remember. Thanks so much. Okay, so let's go to the answer sheet for that. So this is some information I pulled. A lot of times when you're trying to research questions for yourself, it's good to go to the most respected sources. So CMS is a pretty respected source. They have this Medicare Claims Processing Manual. All this is available online. And we have talked about in previous webinars how to do searches and things like that. But so I found this information. It's in Chapter 23 under Section 20.9.1.1b, III. So it's the government. What do you expect? So it says 59 is used to indicate a distinct procedure that could be performed in the same encounter or different encounters. So an example that I use in teaching is from my own experience, unfortunately. I had an oophorectomy. That's an ovary removal. It was an emergency one. They removed it, bring me back to the room, and my vitals went funny, and they had to go do an exploratory lap to see what was going on and to stop some bleeding that was going on. So normally, the laparotomy is bundled into the oophorectomy because it wasn't, you know, a scope procedure. It was an open procedure. So as you may know, the approach to a surgical procedure is always bundled in. You don't code opening them up and then code removing whatever it is and then code closing them up. Okay, it's a bundled situation. Now, in my case, because I had to be brought back to the OR and they had to open me back up, they really did 2 laparotomies. So in that case, they would bill the second laparotomy separately. But if a payer saw a laparotomy and a oophorectomy, they'd think they don't know what they're doing. These 2 codes are bundled. We're not paying for the 49000, the laparotomy. But we as coders, if we put Modifier 59 on, that's our way of telling the payer that this looks bundled, but it's not. This was done at a separate time in this case. Same date of service, but different time of day. Okay? That's just one example. Another one I use a lot is about lesion removals or something like that. If we can use RT or LT or some other modifier to tell the story to the payer why it should be paid, we are to use those modifiers before Modifier 59. Modifier 59 is the modifier of last resort. So always look for other modifiers to tell the story you're trying to tell. If you can't, then use 59. So if you have 2 lesions on the right forearm and they're both removed, they're going to have, and you also, maybe it was some injury. They were on a motorcycle and had a crash. So they may be doing some removals, maybe some stitches. Well, if you do a lesion removal and stitches, you know, stitches are bundled into the lesion removal. At least simple repairs are. So we have to put 59 on the simple repair code to indicate, no, this is separate from these other codes being reported. So that's another way you can use it. Okay? So the official definition is it's used to indicate a distinct procedural service. The physician may need to indicate that a procedure or service was distinct or independent from other services performed on the same day. This may represent a different session or patient encounter. We kind of talked about a few of those examples. Different procedure or surgery altogether, a different site or organ system. Something makes it separate and distinct. That's when you would use Modifier 59. And here's a rationale I found out on the web. Multiple services provided to a patient on one day by the same provider may appear to be incorrectly coded when in fact the services may have been performed as reported. Because these circumstances cannot be easily identified, a modifier was established to permit claims of such a nature to bypass correct coding edits. Not to help you get paid, but to tell the story so you got paid properly. The second bullet, the addition of this modifier to procedure code indicates that the procedure represented a distinct procedure or service from others billed on the same data service. In other words, this may represent a different session, different surgery altogether, different anatomical site or organ system, separate incision or excision, different agent, different lesion, or different injury or area of injury. So it can really cover a lot of different stories that you want to tell. Now, as far as which code to put it on, you're going to put it on the lesser RVU valued one, or the one that's not expected to be paid as much. You want to list that second and put your 59 on that one. So what I do is I go by the RVU. I just sort my codes by RVU value, and the top surgical procedure code gets listed first with no modifier, and then the subsequent one that I'm trying to tell the story is not bundled into the other, I will put a 59 on. You had asked for examples in your question, so here's one. A colonoscopy is performed on a 51-year-old patient with a family history of colon cancer. Multiple polyps were found during the procedure. 2 polyps in the transverse colon were removed with hot forceps cautery, so that's one method, hot forceps, and 3 polyps in the ascending colon were removed via snare. So 2 different techniques, but they're still removing polyps. And then portions were sent to pathology. So the answer is 45384 and 45385-59. We can code both of these because the one code represents the hot forceps and the other one represents the snare technique. Okay, the payer might try and bundle them together, but by putting the 59 on, you're saying, no, these are in 2 distinct areas. And then the next one, I'm going to put up the questions here. I'm going to pull up a poll. Which one would you pick? And, okay, good, we did get the codes in there. So would you pick A or B, focusing on the use of 59? Okay, wow, split decisions here. So 42% say A and 58% say B. All right, let's see here. So it is necessary to use modifier 59 for the first biopsy, indicating it was performed at a different location than the excision. The modifier 59 is not used on the second biopsy code because it's an add-on code. That was the little trick question there, okay? So for those in the replay club, you'll probably want to come back and chew on this one a little bit. So that was our modifier 59 question.
Get more CPC exam tips, coding certification training, and CEU credits. Go to www.codingcertification.org.